So, a little other thing is, this was in the 1960s. If a white woman wanted to be engaged to her black man and make him her husband, she would first have to state or on paperwork that that was her slave. She would have to own him as a slave to be with him.
What year is it?
And 1960s. Was it the 1960s? That's what I wrote down. Right.
Maybe that was 1860.
Yeah, that's what it is. 1860s. And she would have to own his parents. And if they had children together, the children were automatic slaves. Automatically. There was no, oh, but they had white. They was automatically considered slaves. So now, like, let's jump in it. Like, do you, with knowing that history, knowing that we had to fight for that, knowing that Richard and Mildred were incarcerated because they got married, or they were, because a lot of people were common marriage, like it was common law, because they couldn't get married until the 1960s. And it was by state, little by little, each state was approving it, and then in 1967, and that's when it became worldwide US, where you could get married. So knowing that, and then there's some other, because I want to tell y'all what Malcolm X says, and I want to tell y'all something that they talked about on the Breakfast Club today, after I had even come up with the topic. It was crazy. But go ahead. So we'll start with Khalid. Can you be pro-black?
I think that you're allowed to love and be with whoever you want to be with. It is not up for me to judge who you want to be with. That's up to you. But are you being loyal to what you believe in? Are your needs and wants being met? Are you straddling the fence on the side? Or is this person really an ally? Because you can be with somebody from a different race and they can genuinely be an ally. Or you can be with somebody from another race and that can be because you have like some self-hate things going on. But it's a fine, I think it's a fine line when you say pro-black, because pro-black is not really anti-anything, it's just wanting better for black people.
So can you want better for black people and be with a white person?
That's exactly why you get what she just said, right?
I mean, you can be with whoever you want to be with. Just don't in the process say I'm with this white person because I hate black men because black men are trash, or I hate black women because they're angry. Like, don't use that as a scapegoat. Like, you would stand your raggedy ass tree.
Today Angela was out, so Charlamagne and DJ Envy had to do relationship advice, and a young man called in and he said he was trying to get back his Spanish girlfriend. He was a black guy, and he said we better date him for 2 to 3 months, and she left him because he said in her culture, when you date for 3 to 4 months,
you gotta get married.
we get married.
What?
And he was like, I'm not really with that. I didn't. So how do you get? We'll date for 5 years, 14 years.
You might live forever, just become a married.
Yeah.
So he was like, how do I get her back? And so then Charlamagne.
You let that go.
Pretty much.
Charlamagne was like, you go find yourself a sister. Go find yourself a queen. He said, that's what my advice would be personally, brother. Like, go find yourself a queen, go find yourself a sister, leave her alone. She don't want you no more, she's moved on. This Negro gonna say, the caller, yes. This Negro gonna say, I don't prefer black.
See, here we go. See?
That's not my type. Charlamagne said, hang on this. I'm done talking to him. And DJ Envy stuttering trying to talk to him. Charlamagne like, no. I don't even want to talk to him no more. And that's what he said. Charlamagne said, you self-hate. He said, what does your mother look like? What does your
Yeah. Don't fall into that stereotype.
Stand in your raggedy ass truth. And whatever that truth is. You're allowed to have that.
Right.
Stand in that.
You read this. We try to read our comments as we go.
It says, unfortunately, a lot of our West Indian ancestors who taken up European ways do not recognize their African and indigenous heritage, so self-hate is a part of the problem too.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I look for videos with Malcolm X because I love Malcolm X and I always like go refer back to him when I want to understand something or if I don't know how I should feel about a situation in America, being a black woman. What does Malcolm X think about this? And that's kind of how I hear myself. And you know, he said that the black man, he said first of all with the black woman, the black man needs to protect her from the white man because he doesn't feel as though the white man ever respects our women back from slavery because they raped us, they took what they wanted from us. It was never a agreement thing, and then they didn't take care of their children. They disowned the biracial child. And now that we aren't slaves anymore, it's like I think in his eyes, it's still a disrespect. It's still I can do whatever I want to y'all woman. And he said, but the white man will not allow you to come into his community and take his white woman and marry his white woman. It will be a war. You see what they did to Black Wall Street just because supposedly he whistled at her or said whatever he said to her. Then on the flip side, when he said about black men, he said black men, we have to change our way of thinking. We think the only way that we are successful or we mean anything is if we buy a house in a white neighborhood, get a job offered to us by a white man. And success for a black man isn't success until he is married to a white woman.
Or, well, it's a little bit of that, I forgot what they call it, like you need that white,
I know exactly what you're saying. Right. You need the white
validation.
Exactly.
That's the white validation.
Yes. And I think that's what our problem is. Like, for example, when we do information and we say, all right, look, well, this is going on. Or, well, where did you hear that from? You know,
they want a black person say it.
Right.
You don't want to listen. But if you hear a white person, listen.
Yeah, right. You know, that's a problem with us. Like,
it definitely is. Second guessing.
We have to be able to say, like, look, we're smart, we're great, we're beautiful. We can do everything that they do.
Better.
Exactly. Now, so when you
these views are solely these views, they do not represent.
Now, look, this is where.
But I sit here in my raggedy ass truth.
The whole thing, like, I think, you know, it's a very, like as you said before, it's a very fine line.
It's a very fine line.
So can you be pro-black and date outside of your race?
I'm gonna go to one of the cliche that a lot of people say, love is blind, right? You know what I mean? So if you come across somebody, you know, you're doing whatever you're doing in life, and then you meet somebody and y'all start clicking. You know, everything starts going the way you like. You know, you're laughing together, you know, you're having fun, and then you start to see the twinkle in their eye. At that point, you're like, oh, this is a white person. So do you want to say, you know what, I can't go any further than this because you're white?
But I noticed you were a white person when we met.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody like Colleen, she not even talking to you.
It's not even that, because you know what? I'm gonna sit here in front because I don't discriminate. I regulate. It don't have nothing to do with shade. It don't have nothing to do with race. It don't have nothing to do with none of that. Because I've dated all up and down in between.
Right.
Like that's not the issue for me. The issue for me is whether or not you're an ally or not. If you're a true ally.
Sure. And I think you get that as you start to
talk to them
and go further into whatever y'all relationship that y'all have. So if you're pro-black beating the drum B1 all day, that has to be identified early on, like immediately.
Yeah.
Like, look, this is where I stand. I'm pro-black. Like when shit pop off, I'm going black all day. You know what I mean? Now, if this person can say, all right, I'm cool with that, like I don't have a problem with that, then y'all go a little further because it's hard.
But what if you are? Can you accept you being on the front line and you being say marching with the Black Lives Matter
and
doing all that?
Right,
shit, but then he or her not wanting, he has this what do you call it, the blue collar, the corporate job. He just doesn't want to be involved in it, and he might not want your children involved in it. He's like, babe, hey, I love you, I love our Black family, you know I love you, you know I'm not racist, but I'm not for the
saying
marching.
nothing is being complicit though.
True.
But
So,
what if he's like, hey, you like living here, you like the money.
And then here we go with that because I'm the white savior.
But see, let me finish because it's not as cut and dry as, you know, sometimes we like to make it out to be. So for example, if you're pro-black and you're going out and you're looking for somebody of the opposite sex, you have to have your priorities in order. So when it comes down to it, like, are you gonna be the one that says, all right, look, I'm only dating my sisters or my brothers, right after, no matter what happens in my life, because life is different than what you know.
Imagine.
Right. So one of the things, like some of the things that we were talking about, like if you're in corporate America as a black man or a black woman, chances are you're surrounded by 90% of white people. You know what I mean? So the chance of you falling in love with somebody is very heightened because what's going to happen when you go to work, that's all you're going to see. When you go.
No.
So then when you go out to say, all right, we're going out, say after drinks afterwards or functions outside of work, you know, you may be running around with those same people.
But this,
you know what I mean? So things start to get a little murky when now I'm out hanging around, you know, somebody of the opposite race, and then things start, you know, oh wow, look at her, she's looking pretty fly. And then you got that corporate job, you're living in a neighborhood that's not dominated by white people, by black people or people of your same race. So then that adds another layer of group of people that you're going to be.
Or my shadow who said, okay, go to the hood and find her. Don't find her at the corporate job.
No, but I'm not trying to validate people that are dating outside their race. I'm just painting a picture of how these things can happen.
But I had this saying, well, I was talking about the economical standpoint of that.
Right, and that's another thing, if you're pro-black, you have to understand, because when you are gaining all this wealth, and then next you know you're only around these certain type of people.
You don't want to date down. And why do you have to date down?
Right, now when you start talking about this, you're a black person, you got this white person in your corner, and now y'all decide to make a commitment, and you have all this money. Now, when something happens to you, that money is going to your spouse. Now, if your spouse is of the opposite sex, then, of course they are the opposite race, where's that money going then? And then that's where you have to also think about that, because if they're not down with,
because it's not going back into the
right, they're gonna take that money,
going right back into
and then who is she remarrying with all that money? Is she going back to the well of black people, or is she going back to her environment?
I feel you, or potato who said I grew up in a brigantine and I still want to meet a black or Spanish man.
True, like all I'm saying is you can want what you want, but then when you find yourself in certain circumstances, it's not easy.
It's easier to say what you're going to do until you are actually faced with that situation. And I feel like I'm a prime example because before I met my spouse, but before I met my spouse, and I still am very pro-black. And even my younger sisters were like so surprised. Oh, even I don't think so. But even my younger sisters were so surprised that I actually dated outside of my race because I was so, like, I even had wrote a poem about being in a relationship with a black man, like a black man. I wanted to have black children. I wrote a poem about it. Like, I couldn't wait to start my black family. And I actually wrote on my vision board everything I wanted, and I left race out. I forgot to put I wanted a black man.
Right.
I put that I wanted him to think with his heart. I wanted him to love his family. I wanted him to be respectful. Like, everything that I put that I wanted him to be, I didn't put I wanted him rich. Everything that I wanted him to be, that's what Chris ended up being. So when I was just like, I remember sitting there looking at his inboxes and just like sitting there thinking to myself, like, this don't make sense though. But then how he made me feel in the conversation, it was just like, okay, so you gonna walk away from this in hopes that you find
all this in somebody else.
That just because his skin tone don't match.
Right. And that's
what you saw, you're like, that's what the universe will do to you. The universe, God will play that.
Girl, you gotta be specific on the mic.
Don't we know? Yes, you do. Don't we know? Yes, you do.
Specific.
And I love my man, he's Cuban, and when I tell you he's more pro-black than half, I fucking know. First of all, he is 10 of them, and I think 8 of them all is married to black people. He's very pro-black. He taught me a lot of stuff about my ancestral
veneration and stuff like that.
Yeah, black history and stuff like that. Things that he knew, even with South Korea and how he respects the African culture because he knows that his culture really wouldn't be anything without the African culture. So, but I also noticed, especially when we moved to Georgia, because he's of the fair skin, people automatically assume he's either Italian or Arab. And I was treated differently. I was looked at like, oh, this was a white man. And it's like, I used to tell him, like, can you wear some Timbs? If you wear Timbs,
they gonna know.
They gonna know you Spanish, but you got wear these little hats and these little
hat on.
Yes, and you got these little things, so they think you white.
They blew his hair out.
Yes, so they think you a white boy. But
what's going on, G? What's going on, girl?
But for me, it's always been a soft, like, an uncomfortable thing with me. Because I always felt like I was portraying my black man by being with a Cuban man. And me and him recently had this conversation. He was like, I am a black man. And I said, no, you're not.
Is he that
I like, no, you're not, because even though you are discriminated against because people think you're Muslim, people think that you're from a different country, I still think it's a different discrimination for what a black man has to go through. So I don't feel like I understand where you're coming from, because me and him have had this head-to-head conversation, like battles where like, no, I know how it feels. No, you will never know how it feels to be a black man. I'm sorry.
True.
My Latino brothers, like, you will never know how it feels to be a black man. I don't even really know how it feels to be a black man. I can only witness it through my brothers, through my cousins. So I always have battled with that. Am I turning my back on my black man?
Ultimately, I look at it this way. Can you honestly say that you're never been attracted to anybody of the opposite race?
No.
Right. So at that point, so at this point, you're human.
It's a few white boys that I have.
So when you get into these type of situations, you know, they progress. And then when you decide to say, all right, I'm going to end this relationship or end this connection solely on the fact that you're not black, you know, can be a problem, can be an issue. Now, I am B1 all day. I'm black.
Be
You know
one.
what I mean? Black first. You know what I mean? But I can't sit here and tell you that I've never seen an attractive white person. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
And there are some people like, who's our guy? The one that was building the school.
Yeah, Dr. Umar.
Dr. Umar says white people are ugly. You know, just be thinking
Like that. I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with it either. What do you agree with? Like
I
that's.
mean, maybe some of them be looking alike.
I mean, some do, but you can find white people that's ugly too.
Right, exactly. So when it comes down to
It's ugly people in general. Ugly
when it comes down to you going out into your life and you're trying to court somebody, trying to find your mate, you know, you have to be open. And if the universe decides to throw you a wild card, are you prepared to say no because this doesn't match up with my thing that I have in my head, but what you want matches up everything? You know, the 80-20 rule. Are you getting 80% of what you want out of this person? And then you're gonna say no because they're not black, you know what I mean? You know, even though you're pro-black, you know what I mean? That's a hard decision, especially when you start to think about your environment in which you live in. You have to go out there and say, all right, look, when you're going out there searching, you know, you have to be very specific in the arenas that you go into. So if you're looking for a soul brother number one or soul sister number one, you gotta make sure wherever you go looking for your mate, that's all there is. Because if there is anything else that's in that equation, you can go and off course of what you want.